Hi, everyone. We're in for a treat today. This talk is really for anyone who needs a reminder of just how remarkable our planet is, how inspiring some of the people in it can be, and how some stories we never thought possible are happening right now. I'm Katie Losey, Head of Partnerships and Conservation at Natural World Safaris, a travel fixer known for our award-winning next-level wildlife journeys across all 7 continents. One of these trips is swimming with sperm whales in Dominica with Patrick Dykstra. Not your average trip. His journey from a Wall Street lawyer to someone pursuing next level wildlife encounters includes slipping into the water with the largest animals ever known to have lived on this earth. Some of these moments are now immortalized in the stunning PBS documentary, Patrick and the Whale. The BBC sought him after seeing his wild orca footage, which ended up in the very first episode of Blue Planet 2, the most watched wildlife documentary of its time, winning a BAFTA. And while his story is awe-inspiring, it's never about spectacle, it's about reverence. Patrick brings awe, yes, but also understanding and with that protection. It's a huge privilege to have you on as one of our specialist leaders, guiding on our trips, and now as part of Natural World Heroes, extraordinary people reimagining how we connect with the wild and how who share our commitment to the conservation of wild species, wild places, wild cultures, and just wonder. So I'm excited to dive right in. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to
Yeah,
be on.
good. So here, I'll just kick it off. You've humbly said that you're not a marine biologist, you're not a scientist, you're just a dude at sea. And yet you've documented blue whales nursing, incredible sperm whale social behaviors. You were even assigned to be a babysitter for sperm whales for about 40 minutes. That says a lot in itself. My questions are, one, how do you earn the trust of a sperm whale? And two, what are you most proud of regarding how your work is really contributing to the protection of these species?
Sure. I think earning the trust of a sperm whale is something like earning the trust of a human being, right? These are big-brained mammals. They're thinking. They have complex brains. Not only they have big brains, their brains have neocortex and spindle cells. These are brain structures that we associate with emotion and higher level thinking. So, to answer that question, it's the same way you would earn the trust of a human being. You behave, you spend a lot of time with them. Over time, they learn that you're not a threat, that you're friendly, that you're interesting, that you're funny or whatever, and then, they trust you. And so, especially the sperm whales in Dominica, I've been visiting, I think 14 years in a row now, sometimes for months at a time. And so you start encountering the same whales. On some level, I'd like to think that certain whales like me because they come over to me and seek me out and maybe swim between other people to come to me. Probably it's equal, it's an equal chance. It's just familiarity. It's just that I'm there with different people frequently and they know, oh, that's the thing we recognize. So we'll go over to that thing that we trust. But maybe they like me. I hope so. I like them.
Yes. And then what are you most proud of in terms of how your work is contributing to their protection?
Sure. I think you got to be very careful. It's very delicate with taking people or even making movies or documentaries showing these animals and where they are and how to get to them because they already have a lot of pressure on them from human beings, from, ship noise to pollution to all of these other pressures that humans put on them. So the last thing they need in their life is more pressure from people, chasing them around in boats and trying to jump in with them. And so it's always a fine line of what are we doing to protect them and what are we doing that disturbs them? And so, and scientists have to ask themselves the same questions. If they put a tag on a whale, they're going to get a fantastic amount of data, but also that whale has to get a suction cup stuck on it, which it may not like and swim around. And so, yeah, I think everybody does their own cost benefit analysis. And I do the same thing is what impact am I having? And I think if I take very small groups of people and I lobby very hard for strict permit systems that limit the number of people out at sea with whales, in the water with whales, that, if those things all line up, and we try to do that in everything that we do with the tourism side, especially, you can take, subsets of people out to see these amazing animals. And over the course of my career, I've taken, hundreds of people, and some of them have gone on to be massive contributors, both financially and on the big screen to the lives of these animals and to the protection of these animals. So I'm very proud of that, especially proud of the hundreds of people I've shown whales and the amount of time and effort and money and screen time that a lot of those people have given to these animals, which I think contributes to their protection and their understanding.
100%. Isn't it 3 to 1? Is it just you're in the water with just 3 people maximum at a time?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for, the last decade, there's only been one boat allowed out in Dominica in particular at a time to interact with the whales. So if you have one boat out and it's out for 6 hours and an hour each way is coming and going from the dock, you're only with the whales for a limited number of their surfacings, and you probably don't see the same whale every surfacing. So, but if I run the math in my head and think, if a whale comes to the surface 30 times a day, and it sees a human on one or two of those 30, and you're delicate and gentle and kind and don't disturb it, you're having a very minimal impact on its life. But the impact it has on the people who have that experience as life is immeasurable. And sometimes it's, for a lot of people, it's life-changing. I've
Yeah.
had many people cry, many people tell me it's the best day of their life. And a lot of those people go on to be big contributors to the lives of these whales. In fact, I have a guy, unfortunately, I can't be there with him, but I have a guy in Dominica today who is swimming with 3 sperm whales. And the reason he is there is because he's about to star in a major $60 million budget documentary about a man who gets swallowed by a sperm whale. And he wanted, before he makes this documentary, to have an experience himself
Wow.
with a sperm whale in the water so that he can better act in that film and better bring proper awareness to sperm whales and what they are and what they do and how they behave. So that was important to me to get him down there and get him in the water before that movie starts filming in Hollywood next week. So it's those kind of things that I work on, and that Natural World Safaris works on, to try to, while we are interacting with the animals, to do it in a way that ends up being a net benefit for those whales.
Yeah. Great. So Dominica's been your backyard for about over a decade, 14 years. You've almost accidentally become an expert on sperm whale behavior. After all of this time, what do you wish people knew about sperm whales that,
Yeah, I think it's trying, it's how individual they are, right? It's that they're very similar to humans. And you can look at, for example, global numbers and say, well, the global sperm whale population is increasing, so we're doing the right things. But if you get to know the whales as individuals, as can opener and digit and pinchy and fingers, and you can see, well, their unit is declining. The number of whales in their unit is going down. And in fact, the number of whales in the Eastern Caribbean is going down. That population is going down. And I like to use an example there from my friend Shane Garrow, who's the leading sperm whale researcher and scientist in that region, where, if we were to say, lose India, right? The human population is increasing, but if we were going to lose India, you wouldn't say, well, that's okay, because, globally humans are doing fine. So if India falls into the ocean or gets wiped out by a tsunami, no big deal. Oh, no, that is a big deal, right? India is a unique subset of people with a unique culture, unique food, unique dance, unique stories, unique religion. You don't want to lose that. And you wouldn't say, oh, well, all is well. Globally, humans are doing fine. And that's the same thing I want to teach people about sperm whales, is they're very unique. They have their own personalities, they have their own families, they all have names. And so if the Eastern Caribbean population of sperm whales is declining because of us, which it is, we should be concerned about trying to fix that. We shouldn't just say, yeah, but globally sperm whales are doing fine, so
yeah,
don't worry about it. No, no,
yeah.
no. If you can introduce people to digit and pinchy and fingers and can opener and Dolores, and
Hmm.
then they care on an individual level, then you think more about, okay, what can we do to solve that? And
Yeah,
one of the things we've done, for example, is to put giant visible fish aggregation devices out in the ocean in Dominica to replace the really cheap, poor ones that fishermen themselves put out, and those entangle sperm whales. So by bringing funding in, we can buy better fish aggregation devices that are sperm whale safe, which is
yeah,
exactly one of the many things that we're doing there.
yeah. Fantastic. Um, One of the first times I came across your work was in the Natural World Safaris magazine, when it was a moment when you were clicking underwater with a sperm whale and you were really kind of communicating with her, and she actually turned around to come back and look at you. And I was like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Does he speak whale? Like, please tell all of us a little bit more about that experience, and just were you shocked? Um, and do you speak whale? I mean, I know they have their own dialects, and then you were talking about they have their own personalities, and they have their own, like, like they have like their southern accents or Boston accents in the sperm
Yeah,
whale world.
yeah. No,
Um,
that's right. Yeah, and those
yeah.
Eastern Caribbean sperm whales, the whales that are, especially the ones offshore of Dominica, we call them EC1 whales. They have a 2 pause 3 social coda, 2 pause 3 or 113.
Okay.
So that means I am an Eastern Caribbean sperm whale. They say it to each other when they meet. There are other whales there that don't use the 2+3, that are more offshore whales, EC2 whales, we call them, that are more passing by Dominica. They don't use that same social coda. So yeah, I had a lovely encounter just laying on the surface, eye to eye with this sperm whale for maybe 5 or 6 minutes. And then finally, I guess I wasn't interesting enough to her and she started to swim away. And I started to swim sort of slowly behind her and I couldn't keep up. She was swimming very slow for a whale. Very slow for a whale is still really fast for a person. So I'm trying to keep up and not doing a very good job. And so I made this 2+3 coda. And then I knocked it on my metal camera housing, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
And she stopped completely. And
Oh
then
my
let me
gosh.
catch up again and get eye to eye next to her again. And then she looks at me and I look at her and she looks at me. And we had another lovely 4 or 5 minutes. And then she started to swim away again for 4 or 5 minutes. So as I got back by the tail and couldn't keep up, I did it again. And this time she inverted completely and turned all the way back around and came head to head with me. And, just to see, I think, what is going on? Like, what is this? For a sperm whale, this thing is tiny. It's a terrible swimmer. It's maybe a special sperm whale that needs way
Yeah.
out. So yeah, it was a very interesting and fulfilling experience. Yeah, it was cool.
Super cool. You've talked about NASA and MIT trying to decode the whale language through AI, and even Project SETI is in the news all over the place right now, just suggesting that this new like decoding their language could lead to legal protection for whales, just based on this language. What's your take on that? Have you been involved? Do you have any? And I know that you kind of have a more personal understanding relationship. It's more of it's not just the decoding, there's a whole different level with you. So anyway, just wanted to kind of throw that out there, see what
Yeah,
you
I
thought.
mean, look, am I perhaps somewhat biased, but my opinion is it's the most exciting. Project SETI is doing the most exciting scientific work in all of marine science. Full stop. It is the most exciting project in marine science at the moment. They're a brilliant group of people. They're very well funded. I sometimes help out when I can. I play a very, very tiny role whenever I can, either working with their FPV drone pilot on things, throwing out ideas, meeting with David Gruber and Shane
Yeah.
Garrett.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to be as involved as I can. I was at MIT with Daniela Russ a few years ago. She's the main roboticist working on some things upcoming, which hopefully will happen in the near future. Yeah, it's amazing. If you could decode the sperm whale language and you could say things to them like, "Hey, the shipping lane is here. Stay away from there. Hey, the fish aggregation devices look like this. Stay away from those. Hey, avoid the ship traffic in this other region." It would be great. You could potentially save their lives in lots of ways. And if you could understand what they were saying, of course, which is the first step, maybe they're saying this ship noise is really bothersome. If it were lower pitched or higher pitched or this decibel level or whatever, you could do a lot of things to help them. But
Yeah.
that would be the goal.
Yeah. It's so encouraging to see it getting so much press right now. So I'm curious to follow that story. Um, And on that note, something that really intrigues me is their sonar, that sperm whales use echolocation, that biological sonar it's louder than a rocket launch at 230 decibels. But and I guess it's like X-ray vision where they could like see if somebody was pregnant or if there was like a hook in a squid that they maybe would want to avoid. Um, so my question is, do you feel that? Like one, the loudness must be completely different in water. And then do you feel this when they're sensing you? Please share that experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can sometimes for sure. Now this is where reality and myth come together. There
Okay.
was you read some wild stuff on the internet, not just about whales. I mean,
Yeah,
generally
yeah.
about whales, about it can blow out your eardrums and it can
Yeah.
do this and it can do all these things. None of that's true. That's all
Yeah.
completely false. While in air, it can reach a decibel level that could damage your eardrums. In water, that's not how sound works.
Right.
And just a little bit of common sense applied to some of these things people read online would go a long ways. Just like, for example, if a whale were going to make a sound loud enough to blow up your eardrums, who's the closest to that sound? The whale.
Yeah.
It would blow his own head up first, and its friend's head, and anybody else's head near. Like
Yeah.
it's not a thing, and
Yeah.
and it's not a thing because they don't blow each other's heads up or burst each other's eardrums. But sometimes you can feel the strong echolocation, especially for male sperm whales. Their head is much bigger and they make a much louder sound. They also make a different clanging sound that the females don't make. And sometimes when they're making this booming echolocation, you can feel it in your chest.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really fascinating animals. You know, biologically, they had two nostrils, the same as us, and over time, evolutionarily that shifted, and then they've got now one external nostril, and the left one's shifted and then twisted inside the head. So they have one nostril inside their head and one nostril outside their head that's way on the left-hand side of the body. It's not at the top like an orca, it's way on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And so evolutionarily, that internal nostril is what allows them to make the loudest sound in the animal kingdom, which
Wow.
is loud echolocation clang. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, it's it's like magic, right? If you'd have said to a human 200 years ago, no, 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 let me explain this thing. They can see using sound, and you can like see inside things. I could
Yeah.
see your heart using sound.
Yeah.
You, this guy needs to go to the insane asylum. It needs to
Yeah.
be right. But then we discovered sonar, which
Yeah.
is seeing with sound, and now it's we know, of course, you can see deep sea minerals, you can see a hook in a fish, you can see all sorts of things with sonar,
Yeah.
and it's a thing. But again, if you'd have talked about it a few hundred years ago, you'd have had people committed to the insane asylum. But that is how sperm whales see. And so certainly they can use echolocation and see your internal organs, your heart, your kidneys. They take fish off long lines and they always bite right behind where the hook is in the fish because they see with the sonar, the metal hook, and they know I don't want that. They bite right behind the hook and take the fish off.
So crazy. I think it's Ed Yong's book, Immense World, but he gets into sonar and he was talking about that and just like how, of course, like even the Navy has mimicked sonar and looking at animals as their inspiration, like biomimicry. It's just so interesting. Um, and then on that note, when early in my days at Natural World Safaris, my colleague had just returned from swimming with sperm whales with you, and she was talking about your homemade hydrophone and like made out of a salad bowl. And I was like, ah, like I just wanted to see photos of it. I wanted to understand it. I want to know a little more on that backstory. What does it pick up? Why do you need it? Like, give me the scoop.
Hey, listen,
And I want
there's a lot of tech that goes into that salad bowl on a
to,
stick.
yeah,
You look at it and it looks like something. I've probably made 20 of them in different parts of the world, and then
yeah,
I usually leave them there because they're hard to travel with. But it is basically a salad bowl on a stick. But you learn over time how deep should the bowl be? How big should its diameter be?
yeah.
Should I use a metal pole? Because you find out early a metal pole transmits sound from all around down to your microphone. So you need a wooden pole. And then,
Mm,
there's all these things that go into manufacturing one of
yeah.
these. And then, do I dampen the sound? So yeah, that's it. It came about through a lot of trial and error. And then, the original microphone I had was made for detecting leaks in your swimming pool liner. It was this very crappy microphone you would put in your pool. And if you hear a tss, there's a problem. And if you
Yeah.
don't, the pool's not leaking. Now there's a lot of great companies making really good hydrophones for whale sounds
Okay.
specifically. So now I've upgraded to using those. Um, but I've had a time where we were on a trip and things got forgotten and the tools weren't available. And I took my sandal. I have a mouse pad here as an example, but I took my sandal and I cut a hole in the rubber and I shoved the microphone through the hole in my rubber sandal and then I stapled it on the broomstick and we used that. And
Should go in a museum. I wish we still had this.
it wasn't fantastic, but it was
So
good
cool.
enough. We found the whales with that. That was in
Yeah.
Mauritius many years ago. So yeah, you basically need a decent microphone, a set of headphones, and a way to block the sound from all but hopefully one direction. And then yeah, you
And you're
listen for
just listening
hunting.
for their clicks. You're just
Correct.
listening. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And normally it's their hunting click because they're down at depth. You're
Yeah.
listening for where they're hunting, and then you go that way. And depending on your hydrophone, you might have a 3 to 6 mile range on it. You don't really want more than that because then you start picking up sounds that you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then you eventually just you zero in on the location. You hear it if you hear it north, and you drive 5 miles north, and you put the hydrophone in, and you hear it south. You've passed them, or they've swam south past you. And then you go back and you do another check 2 miles back, and then you find them. Yeah.
Okay.
Mouse.
Okay.
It's kind of fun.
What?
Like a little cat and mouse,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fun. It's part of
Yeah.
the excitement.
Um, So at Natural World Safaris, we believe that, of course, wildlife has an intrinsic right to exist, and that sensitive tourism can really give it an economic reason to stay wild. So, what have you seen in Dominica with sperm whales that supports that idea, or other places that you'd want to mention?
Sure. I mean, there are places like Sri Lanka, for example, that are a bit more of a cautionary tale where, unregulated tourism can chase animals away.
Yeah.
The key is to have very strict regulation about the number of people, the number of boats, the distance, the amount of pressure you can put on these animals. Left unregulated, it's a total disaster. And the last thing I want to be is a part of that problem.
Yep.
So, we have stopped going to places where there is no regulation because the last thing you want to do is shine a spotlight on these places, and then other people want to go. And so Dominica is a good example because we work with the government every day. I met with the prime minister. I took the prime minister out the first time he ever saw sperm whales was swimming with whales with me.
Mhm.
Um, and he has full power in the country there. He appoints the president and such, so he's the guy. We did the same with the president in Timor-Leste, and Will, the founder of Natural World Safaris, was with me on that one. It's important to take these heads of state out and show them what they have, what it's worth, and why they should protect it.
Yes. Yes. Um, on that note, Dominica recently opened the world's first marine reserve centered around sperm whales. What does this mean for conservation globally? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're hoping. I mean, there's still some pieces left for the Sperm Whale Marine Reserve as far as the implementation goes. But yeah, it is almost through the political system, and then next comes the actual implementation and enforcement of these new rules. So we're not quite over the hill yet with getting everything figured out with the Sperm Whale Marine Reserve, but it is moving in the right direction, and hopefully it becomes. Let's see what it becomes. If it becomes what it is supposed to, it could be a model for the other countries in the world to make money from these animals in a sustainable way, in a way that doesn't bother the animals. So that's the hope, is that you have generating revenue for these countries. You're raising awareness and taking lots of people, not lots, but a certain number of people to see them, to
Hmm.
experience them, hopefully see them in the water, to fall in love with them. If done correctly, it can be a win for the animals, for the country, for tourism, all the way around.
Yep.
So, let's hope that the implementation goes well and that it becomes a model for other countries. You could have the US model, which is a lot different. The US effectively has a total ban on getting in the water with any cetaceans. Maybe that's the right answer. I don't think so. I think there's a way to regulate it properly, but it's not easy, and you have to want to. And so let's see what Dominica does, and if it works, perhaps other countries will follow suit.
Yeah. And you've kind of already touched on this, but in your film, Patrick and the Whale, you said it really eloquently. You said something like, the more we understand them, the more we can help protect them. And just how does that understanding, the emotional connection, lead to protection? Because I think that as humans, we all think that we're such rational creatures. And yet it's like that, taking the prime minister out, it's like, it's just such a game changer oftentimes. So what do you think? Yeah, can you speak to that?
People have to care, right?
Yeah,
They have to care.
yeah,
They're not going to protect things that they don't care about,
yeah.
they don't know about. First, they have to know about them, and then they have to care about them. And then the next step is understanding what those things need to succeed in the world. What do sperm whales need to succeed in the world? What do blue whales need to succeed in a world of 8 billion people?
Hmm.
Uh, but people have to care first. And that's part of what we do, is through filmmaking, through tourism, is helping people care, which is really the first step in getting these animals protection that they need and that they deserve.
Yeah. I mean, you've made your life's work almost around like wonder and awe. I feel like we're in a world where people are like scroll like doom scrolling, walking around half there, half awake. And how do you really, I mean, I love this part of what you do and what I do, what Natural World Safaris does, but how do you help people kind of like wake up through these encounters? Like, what is that like? I mean, you kind of have spoken to some of them, but it's like you're in there day in and day out, and it still seems like you're completely moved and it's an emotional experience and you're hungry for it. For somebody that's, sitting behind their desk and like typing away all day, like, what does that do to someone?
Scrolling cat videos and
Yeah.
typing away. It's
Yeah.
what most people seem to do. Yeah, I
Yeah, or
mean,
like walking down. I mean, I'm walking down the New York City sidewalks and people are like bumping into people because we're all just like zoning out on our phones.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
depressing. So kind of what's the antidote? Give us a
Yeah,
little
I
bit of
mean,
that antidote life.
Yeah, taking people out, it's totally out of their comfort zone most of the time. You're in a foreign country, you're on a small boat, you're 3 to 10 miles offshore, you're with people you'd probably just met, and then you're getting in the water with 30,000 pound animals.
Yeah.
It's not your everyday life, and it's certainly a lot different from this. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I have had, as before, so many people cry. So many people tell me it was the best day of their life. People tell me they have not been this happy in a long time. I mean, all these kind of things, which tell you it's having a big impact on people, right? It's making them care, and that's important. That's what matters the most to me.
Yeah. And I think
I
it was
get
tra
asked all the time, like, why don't you take bigger groups? Well, you'll make a
Mm,
lot more money if you take 10 people.
not the point. Yeah. No.
That's totally true. I would make a lot more money if I took 10 people, and I'd make even more money if I took 20, and I'd make even more if I went 50 weeks a year. But these are not the goals. The goals are to make people care, to show them the awe and wonder of these animals. And when you're taking 3 people at a time with you in the water, and you have maximum 6 with you on the boat, so you're alternating 3 people, 3 people. This is interesting. This is
Yeah.
exciting and fun, and gives people that intimate experience, and ultimately makes them care.
And on that note, I think it was Travel and Leisure's Maggie Shipstead wrote an article about her trip with Natural World Safaris, obviously guided by you. And it was all about responsible, like if you want to go do this, go with Patrick, go with Natural World Safaris. Why does this trip deserve that recognition? What's the difference between the others?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we're in a world now where, every influencer is a tour guide and an expert. And, I've seen people go and they've been to wherever, Norway, one time as a guest. And the next year they're leading tours as the expert.
Yeah.
Are you getting your money's worth if you go with them? I have people message me all the time. Oh, well, I found this trip that's cheaper. Go on that trip.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
Sometimes people see whales and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they get on a boat that's not safe. And sometimes they show up with 12 other people. I've heard plenty of stories where, I chartered a trip and I paid for all 5 spaces, and I showed up and there were 2 strangers on the boat, and the guy pretended like they were staff, even though they were clearly paying tourists who were there with me. And, just tell this guy that you're staff because I can hear you. I hear you telling these people that. You just hear
Yeah.
all these kind of stories. And yeah, so for sure, anything I do, you're gonna, not anything, but most things you're gonna find someone cheaper. I mean, we do some things that nobody else in the world is doing, but we don't talk as much about those. But yeah, it's not about being the cheapest. It's about being, the best and giving the best encounters. And that comes with, how many years of experience do you have? What kind of vessel are you using? How many crew are on board? What's the experience of those crew? There's a lot that goes into it. And,
Yeah.
I have no interest in being the cheapest at anything, really.
Yeah. And it's also so much about just like the access to these like insider stories and behind the scenes stuff that like, I mean, you've lived with the sperm whales for, like you've had that relationship for over almost 15 years. That's like just remarkable. The knowledge exchange that will happen when you're with somebody that's kind of just, it's
And there's
that to
a real
me is,
nuance to it. There's a lot of nuance that maybe people don't always understand. You can see, we're out the same day and there's our boat and there's another boat right over there. And you might be tempted to think, well, yeah, the people on that boat are in the same area with the same whales, and aren't they getting the same experience?
no.
No, because I've seen the whales do this and they go a little bit left. And so you move the boat a little bit right and you go in and they're 20 meters away. And this happens, and that other boat puts people in just behind the whales and they don't actually see anything, or
Yeah,
they a
of course.
little too close to the whale and the whale avoids because they don't have that much experience with how to drive the boat or when to say go or how to swim. Or, there's a lot of nuance that comes in getting really epic encounters. And not every that comes with years of experience, frankly.
Yeah. And I love the idea that you're going with somebody that the whales trust. Like to me, that's like the biggest, if there's a life goal, I mean, that fact that like a whale, I mean, I love that. So anyway, um, thank you. Okay, one question I really wanted to ask. What happens in our bodies after experiencing this kind of wild connection? Because I think about, when if nature's proven to lower our heart rates, reduce stress, boost creativity, that's just like even looking at a screen that's like watching a waterfall or something. Like, what does it do to, like, you can speak firsthand, just anecdotally, but just like, what does that do to your, like, internally to have these types of just like next level wildlife experiences like this?
I think it just opens your eyes to really what living can be, right? There's this quote
Yes.
somewhere that's about life not being about the amount of breaths you take, but the moments that take your breath away.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a well-known quote, and but it's true. I mean, so much of life, even for me, there's a lot of mundanity in it, right? You've got to cook 3 meals a day. You've got to commute to the place you're going. You've got to answer your emails. So and this is everybody's life, right? But it's these moments, whether it's a minute or 5 minutes of being, in water that's 5,000 feet deep, floating at the surface with 30,000 pound animals checking you out. I mean, these are, I think, when we get to the end, the moments you look back on in your life and think, well, I'm really glad I did that. I'm really glad I experienced that, because the rest of it kind of blends into everyday life. And so seeking out those kind of really breathtaking, epic, special encounters is, that's what makes life worth living, I think. And, being able to show that to other people is even more spectacular. And then to see the joy and wonder in their eyes and how, they get on the boat. And, I received a lovely email the other day from someone who was on one of my trips. He's now been on 3 trips,
Mm.
saying, thank you for showing me what living is, what
Damn.
it is to be alive. Because this is
Yes.
a lot of people who got up and went to high school and went to college or didn't, and then got a job and goes to work at 9 from 9 to 5 and comes home and feeds the kids and puts them to bed and watches an hour of TV and goes to bed and then does it again the next
Yeah.
day for
Sleepwalking
30
through
years.
life. Yeah.
Right?
I
And
know a
it's
lot
like,
of,
you,
yeah.
you got to get out there and see, like, maybe there's more to life than that.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Um, okay, we're gonna do a little lightning round. Most magical moment underwater.
Oh, I think anytime you see sleeping sperm whales is
Oh,
pretty cool. And
t
I've had a couple of
tell me,
those.
how do they suspend? How did they do that? How are they suspended underwater
It's
vertically?
a lot harder than you think, because you look at it and you think, well, how hard can it be just to, like, just to go like this and just
Yeah.
really easy. You think that until you see the cat try to sleep. When you
Okay.
see
She's
the
like
cat
wobbling.
try to sleep, and it takes a breath and goes down like this, because they do. That's how they start, and then they invert over eventually
Okay.
for the. So it'll go down like this, and it'll start to invert, and then you see it like try to hold there, and then it's floating up, and then it lets out a bunch of air, and then it's sinking, and oh shit, then it starts over, it gets a big breath, tries it again, then it's like this, and then you can see it start to tip, and then it sticks a little fin out to try to, like,
Oh my gosh,
then it
stop.
can't, and then it tips over, and then it tries again, and yeah, it is very
That's
hard
so
to maintain that exact sort of Stonehenge
yeah.
pillar at an exact
Stonehenge
depth
pillar. Yes.
for a long period of time. It takes a lot of skill to do that. But yeah,
Yeah.
anytime you get in the water and you realize, like, oh gosh, they're about to start sleeping or they are sleeping, that is, a
That's
really
the
epic.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm
That's an
so happy you
exciting.
brought that up. Okay. Yeah, most out of body experience.
Yeah, there's been a few. I mean, I at a time we were scuba diving under an active fishing trawler, purseiner at night, that was catching herring, and a lot of the herring had fallen out of the net. They had a problem with their net, and there was maybe 100 killer whales. All just, I put my back to the net, and they were all just
Whew.
there taking fish out of that. Some of them a hand's length away. They weren't interested in me. But that's when it's 2 o'clock in the
Dicey.
morning. It's pitch black. The only
Yeah.
light you have is from the fishing lights from the purse
Yeah.
seiner shining its lights in the water. You got scales everywhere. 100 orca all around getting fish out. You're alone.
Oof.
Pretty
Yeah,
cool. And
that's
it's freezing
intense.
cold water, right? You're in a thick wetsuit, but you're still really cold. It's
Yeah.
that
I
was
got
intense.
caught in a bait ball once and it was like the humpbacks came in and the orcas and the herring and the guts are everywhere. But and I was like, oh, this is, talk about like feeling alive. what you had just described though is like a next level. Like it's just a different level to that. It's too much. It's yeah, yeah. But one thing I do love about all of this is that you don't need to have many skills. You can be like a capable swimmer. You don't need to be a scuba diver for the sperm whales, for the orcas. Like it's
You
very
saying I don't have any
accessible.
skills? Is that what you're
I know
saying?
you're yeah,
Just
no.
say it. I mean,
I mean, like you like look at
I
you. You
can
don't
take it. It's fine.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
If you could do it, anybody could do it,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, even Pat could do it. How hard could it be?
Yeah, everybody look at this. Yeah.
No, that
Okay.
is right. If I am doing my job and the crew is doing their job, the people with us don't have to be particularly good swimmers. They don't have to be scuba certified. There's none of that. You basically just get in the water, swim a little bit, following me, and then float
Yeah.
and let the whales come to you. That's how it should work.
And I've seen just like I saw some footage of you kind of rolling and then one of the sperm whales rolling and kind of mimicking. And I was thinking, is this like just specific to you because it's you have this established relationship, or is it something that you're like, I've seen guests have these types of interactions?
Rolling is a bit of a different thing, but certainly the whales are curious. I mean, I saw a video today of the actor who's in Dominica right now, and he had three sperm whales face to face with him, floating up, looking at
Wow.
him. He's been in the water for a total of he's been out at sea for 2 hours. They're
Oh my
they're
gosh.
they're and he's just floating, and you can see in the video he's literally just floating. He doesn't really know what to do, and the whales are all three checking him out and sonar clicking and so you don't need a lot of skill. You need a crew that has a lot of skill that knows the whales and the behavior and where to put you in and when to stop. And, for example, baby sperm whales, they play this game sometimes like a yo-yo where they will get in and swim away from you. And if you don't follow, they'll leave. So
Okay.
you need to follow, but not
Yeah.
chase because they will let you follow. And then if they stop, you have to stop. Because if they stop and you're like, oh, it stopped, and you go piling in, they're gone.
Yeah.
They want to stop and then you stop and then you can slowly close the gap and then they turn around and hang out with you. But if you thought, oh, I don't want to follow the baby, it's leaving, you'd miss that opportunity. Or if you think, oh, let's follow, let's chase it. Oh, now it stopped. Get over there. It's gone. So you gotta, there's a lot of nuance to getting close, getting really good encounters. And, this is you see sometimes a boat, race in and cut a whale off, and everybody jumps in, and the whale dives like heck to get out of there, and they just see a tail diving into the distance, and they pop up on the surface. Yeah, you saw the whale. High fives. Yeah, and it's like you just don't know what you could have had if you
Yeah.
had been more patient, relaxed, encountered the whale on the whale's terms, positioned yourself so the whale comes to you instead of chasing and leaping and all of this. Like you could have had that whale rolling and playing and on the surface
Mm.
for 10 minutes. And instead you saw a tail disappearing into the distance because you raced in and leapt in the water and
Yeah.
swam hard at it. And,
Another
so.
testament for going with somebody that knows what they're doing and knows how to, yeah. But yeah, it's so interesting. Um, okay, now for like kind of the final. So what are you most what's next? There's still obviously so much to be discovered. What are you most curious about? What's getting you excited about right now?
Sure. Well, I'm working with a German friend of mine, Jörn, and Penguin Random House, who has asked us to write a book about
Ooh.
whale communication and whale journeys. So I'm working on a book a bit with Jörn. Obviously, SETI has some plans in mind, hopefully that I'm going to be involved in. We've been back and forth about a small project with them that I'm not unfortunately at liberty to talk about. So that's going on. And then, of course, there's always new and interesting places, right? There's always different expeditions to places. I mean, for example, we've got ice melting further and further north in the Arctic than ever before. We're giving killer whales access to places where they have not had access in the past. They've got this big dorsal fin. Narwhal and beluga have no dorsal fin.
Hmm.
So their protection from killer whales is to swim under ice because the killer whales with their giant dorsal fin don't want to go under ice.
Hmm.
Now that there's less ice, those killer whales are really mashing the narwhal and beluga populations because they're getting access they didn't have before. To go up there and document that and show the real impact of global warming on these animals and how that's having an effect would be very interesting. Yeah, so there's always new projects, new science, exciting things going on,
Hmm.
different parts of the world. So I'm out and about a
Yeah.
lot.
Yes. Yes, you are. Um,
Patrick and the Whale is just nominated for an Emmy, so that was exciting.
I was just gonna bring that up. And I heard you may be at World Oceans Week at the Explorers Club speaking on a panel. Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Okay,
Hope we'll see. Then
we'll
I've
see.
got Patrick and the Whale was just bought in Japan by a cinema company, so I've got to go to Japan for the cinematic release of that in August.
Great.
Japanese release. Yeah, there's lots going on.
Are there any parts of Patrick and the Whale that didn't make the cut that you're like, oh, that was really good, but that like, kind of like anything that we just you're like behind the scenes, you're like, oh, this was happening, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah. Okay, that's another one.
We had a great opportunity where can opener's calf Hope came over to me and laid head to head with me, and we had our heads touching for some time. Sort of, I could feel through her head, her clicking. We had a lovely couple
Mm,
of moments like that. We could have incorporated that. Yeah, there were lots of directions we could have gone with the film. Ultimately, you have to make a decision and finish your film and get it out there to the world. But yeah, there was a lot of really interesting things, but particularly the amazing interactions I had with Hope kind of after we hadn't released the film yet, but we had basically finished it, and it was a bit too late to get that material into the film without substantially changing it. But that was cool. Yeah.
yeah, I was going to ask you, one of my final questions is like, what is it like to be a babysitter? Like, what was like the most, that must just be the biggest gift that they can give you, I guess. And we can kind of wrap it up with that. But that's just like for anybody, like a human, but the interspecies relationship is so interesting. So, just such a testament to you and your work and your
Yeah, it would
commitment
have
to
been
these creatures.
well, it would have been amazing to be left with a calf on the surface in any event. It would have been an incredible experience to have. But coming off the back of having put a physical suction cup
Mhm.
on can opener and then wondering how much that upset her, and then understanding that she has forgiven me and she's now trusting me with Hope at the surface and letting me babysit, that made it, 10 times more special than
Yeah.
just being asked to be a babysitter, really
Yeah.
being forgiven for something that was truly my fault. And after a decade of building trust, worrying that a 2 minute indiscretion of putting this suction cup on her may have broken that 10 years of work. Understanding that that wasn't the case and things were still okay was important. Yeah, it was amazing.
Well, good. Thank you so much, Patrick. It's just such a privilege to be here with you, and we're grateful to have you as part of our world, to have you as part of our natural world heroes, and yeah, just excited about what's ahead. Um, yeah,
Thank you very
thank you.
much for having me. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
been great. And maybe I'll see you at the Explorers Club
yeah,
soon.
I hope so. I hope so.